The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday, February 20th, the date the Supreme Court came down finally. I think I know why it's taken this so long. Finally, with the decision on the tariff case, and it's quite something. We'll get to all the details, or at least not all the details. The details I've been able to glean from a decision made about 3 hours ago with me teaching a class in the middle. So whatever I've been able to glean, this is going to be looked on, examined, reviewed, analyzed, I think for days and weeks to come because of the complexity of all of this. But to be continued beyond this. Anyway, the top line is that the court has ruled that Trump's use of the IEEPA to impose tariffs is illegal. That is, they've knocked it down. They basically said it is a misuse of the law. The law does not provide the president with the authority to levy taxes, to levy tariffs on imports. They do it for a bunch of different reasons, which we'll get to. They knock it down and basically relegates the decision about tariffs. Says that is Congress's decision, as you can expect. This has Trump fuming. He's furious. He's got a press conference as we speak right now, or a statement as we speak right now. He's got Lutnick with him, the pit bull, who's a complete idiot. But it's an aside. And he's announcing that he's going to impose the tariffs using a different section. Anyway, we'll talk about all that. But let's first talk about the decision itself. So this is a 6-3 decision. The majority decision was written by Judge Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. It's relatively brief. It's 21 pages. 5 other justices joined him in everything except one section of what he wrote. Justice Gorsuch and Barrett joined only the section dealing with the major question doctrine. We'll get to what that is in a minute. Then Justice Gorsuch writes a 48-page concurring opinion, longer than the main opinion. I've got some juicy segments out of that in a minute. That is probably, of all of them, the most important of all the decisions, because Justice Gorsuch is the most principled of all of the justices so far. You might not always agree with him, but he's got something to say. Justice Barrett writes a very short 4-page concurrence, basically weakening her position on the major questions doctrine. Justice Kagan writes a 7-page concurrence, the primary purpose of which is to challenge the use of the major questions doctrine. Because the major questions doctrine has real impact for Democratic presidents in terms of how they use legislation, primarily regulatory agencies, and the 3 liberal justices don't want to endorse a full throttle support of the major questions doctrine. Justice Jackson writes a short 5-page concurring opinion where she is the lone voice, anyway, some argument about legislative reading of the legislative history as the only tool for deciding the case. Again, basically a rejection of the major questions doctrine. Then, in the opposition, Justice Thomas writes a 13-page dissent that takes on the use of the major questions doctrine on separation of powers grounds. So he's defending the Trump administration, and we'll talk a little bit about Gorsuch's objections to Thomas. And then Kavanaugh, who's also in opposition, writes a massive 63-page dissent that basically defends the administration's position in all respects, beginning with the premise that tariffs are one of many means of regulating imports. So the statute under which, i.e. EPA, under which Trump used, has something about regulating imports. Trump argued, the Trump argument was that regulating imports includes tariffs. Most of the judges reject that interpretation, except for Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh generally has the most pragmatic decision of all. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that this is going to create chaos, and this is not good. And anyway, but also the interpretation of the law itself. I think the major decisions here have Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. I read pieces of Gorsuch. I've read only a little bit of Kavanaugh's. This is going to be studied for a long time because of all the different opinions here and all the different disagreements that are going on here. It's hard to extrapolate from this any kind of broader principles that could apply to other laws. But in this case, this is fantastic, in the sense that the ruling basically upholds the rule of law. It upholds the separation of powers. And on that basis, just on that basis, it should be celebrated. It will have probably very little effect on actual tariffs, very little effect on the economy. It's probably going to create a lot of chaos and uncertainty and all kinds of stuff out there, which will probably have negative consequences in the short run, because Trump is likely to impose tariffs in a different way. Economically, who knows what's going to happen of all of this, but I don't think much good. But in terms of separation of powers, in terms of rule of law, this is fantastic. And again, it's probably the case that Gorsuch's decision is the best here, but I haven't read them all. There's no way. And I haven't read the analysis of those who I respect who are going to read them all, which I will over the next few days. So we'll return to this as we go along. But there is a few things that I do think are worth talking about. And let me just say something about, because it's going to keep coming out, about what is this doctrine, the major question doctrine. So the major question doctrine it's a Supreme Court established principle that requires federal agencies to have clear, explicit congressional authorization for regulations with vast economic or political significance. Now, vast is, again, there's a lot of subjectivity here, but tariffs clearly are vast, right? So what the purpose of it is to prevent agencies from relying on vague, old, or implied powers for major policy shifts. And the whole idea here is to curb administrative outreach. And really the key case here is West Virginia versus the EPA, which challenged COVID-19 mandates. But this was a 2022 decision. And this is a big deal for Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh is a big believer in agencies should only be able to do what Congress explicitly says they should do. They shouldn't be able to write the law themselves. They should only be able to do what explicitly is said. So as it applies to the IEEPA, it basically is the IEEPA allows the government to declare an emergency and do these economic emergency and do these specific things. Those specific things are what the executive can do. It can't do other things like tariffs. So just to give you a little bit more on this, courts assume Congress does not delegate decisions of vast economic and political significance to agencies unless the statute clearly says so. The purpose is a clear statement rule that limits the administrative state, the executive, and enforces the separation of powers by pushing significant policy decisions back to Congress. The doctrine has been used to invalidate major federal actions, such as the EPA's power plant regulations, the CDC's eviction moratorium, and OSHA's vaccine mandates. Opponents argue the doctrine is not firmly rooted in the Constitution, is inconsistently applied, allows courts to substitute their policy preferences for those of expert agencies. But that's the point here is, if Congress wants something done, Congress has to do it. It can't just delegate broad, vague, unspecific authority to agencies as they have for decades, and then for the agencies then to write the law. That is not how our constitutional government works. That's not how our separation of powers work. I think it's within the context of the world in which we live, it is a good doctrine, it's the challenge to the Chevron era, Chevron deference, which was a ruling by the Supreme Court in the 1980s, I think, that basically said, we're giving deference to the regulatory agency. The regulatory agency will interpret the law and we give deference to that. The court shouldn't challenge the regulatory agencies. The executive branch has broad authority to interpret law as they see fit. That is now out, basically. So this is very much a Gorsuch, limit the administrative state as much as possible. All right, so a big part of this is EPA did not authorize tariffs, therefore tariffs are out. That's the basis for this decision. This is what Gorsuch writes, kind of as a introduction, if you will, as a big picture to this whole topic. So I'm just going to read you from Gorsuch's concurrence. For those who think it is important for the nation to impose more tariffs, I understand that today's decision will be disappointing. All I can offer them is that most major decisions affecting the rights and responsibilities of American people, including the duty to pay taxes and tariffs, are funneled through the legislative process for a reason. Yes, legislating can be hard and take time. And yes, it can be tempting to bypass Congress when some pressing problem arises. But the deliberative nature of the legislative process was the whole point of its design. Through that process, the nation can tap the combined wisdom of the people's elected representatives, not just that of one faction or man. Their deliberation tempers impulse and compromise, hammers disagreements into workable solutions. And because laws must earn such broad support to survive the legislative process, they tend to endure, allowing ordinary people to plan their lives in ways that cannot when the rules shift from day to day. In all, the legislative process helps ensure each of us has a stake in the laws that govern us and in the nation's future. For some today, the weight of those virtues is apparent. For others, it may not seem so obvious. But if history is any guide, the tables will turn and the day will come when those disappointed by today's result will appreciate the legislative process for the bulwark of liberty it is. Now, there's a lot missing from an analysis like this. Really, what's missing here is principle and the whole notion of rights and individual rights and as a basis. But granted that's gone. I mean, it's gone. You can't expect the Supreme Court to elicit individual rights or anything like that. So he talks about the duty to pay taxes and tariffs. He talks about rights and responsibilities. I hate that language, but given all that, and there's nothing here about rights. I mean, what he is arguing is for the importance of separation of powers, the importance of the legislative process that takes time, that is hard, that takes deliberation and argument. It's exactly what people like Trump want to get around. It's exactly what authoritarians want to get around. They want to be able to just decide and do. They want to be able to act. They don't want to have to pass laws. Laws take time and they're hard, and there's a bunch of people who don't agree with you. And you have to take them into account, and you might have to compromise with them and all of that. That is what, the left has always argued against, a deliberative legislative process, starting with Roosevelt, right? Roosevelt tried to get his stuff passed through basically executive control. He tried to get laws passed that were clearly unconstitutional. And he tried to get them hammered through in spite of the court. And when the court opposed him, he threatened the court and tried to overthrow it. And in that sense, he's the first kind of authoritarian president, probably, based on my understanding of American history, really, he didn't pack the court. He threatened to pack the court, really in American history. So it's this opposition to having to go through the legislative process, passing laws. Every authoritarian hates that. Every authoritarian hates that. And while I believe, that much of the laws today on the books, maybe most of the laws on the books today, I'll go even further, overwhelming majority of the laws on the books today, shouldn't really have passed constitutional muster. Actually, if you have a proper understanding of the Constitution and the concept of individual rights, unconstitutional. You can't just brush them aside. Certainly not as an executive. You have to undo the damage that was done. And you have to undo the damage that was done through a legislative process. And politicians hate that. People who are president hate that. They want to get stuff done as quickly, as effectively as they can. And what Gorsuch is implying here is, when it's your side who's the president and you just want to get stuff done, then to hell with the legislation, let's just get stuff done. But when the other side, you want legislation because you want to slow them down. You want to stop them from getting stuff done that's bad. And I think he's absolutely right. This is an important aspect of the separation of powers and kind of the different roles our government has. Let's see. I have a few, different pieces out of the different decisions that I want to read to you. I think this is from Roberts. The president asserts the extraordinary power to unilaterally impose tariffs of unlimited amount, duration, and scope. In light of the breadth, history, and constitutional context of that asserted authority, he must identify clear congressional authorization to exercise it. IEEPA's grant of authority to regulate importation falls short. IEEPA contains no reference to tariffs or duties. The government points to no statute in which Congress used the word regulate to authorize taxation. And until now, no president has read the IEEPA to confer such power. We claim no special competence in matters of economics or foreign affairs. We claim only, as we must, the limited role assigned to us by Article 3 of the Constitution. Fulfilling that role, we hold that the IEEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. Now you can clap and give them a standing ovation. That's absolutely right. That's the best we can expect, I think, from our courts today. In a footnote, they are looking at other tariffs. They're addressing other tariffs, and they say that have been imposed by a president. And they write, those tariffs were also limited amount, duration, and scope, right? Noting that the 10% surcharge was described by President Nixon as a temporary measure, was in effect less than 5 months, applied only to articles which had been subject to prior tariff concessions, and was capped at congressionally authorized rates, which suggests that they are open to tariffs. It's just not kind of the unlimited authority that Trump has taken on himself, that is broad as broad as it is. Now, one of the things that Gorsuch does is Gorsuch's opinion takes on all the other opinions and challenges them all. He takes on Kagan over the fact that she claims the major questions doctrine is a magical innovation. And he shows that it reaches back to the 18th century, to English corporate law, American municipal, and a bunch of other agency law and a bunch of other things. He calls out Kagan and Sotomayor and Jackson for reading statutory text broadly when it came to the vaccine mandate, eviction moratoriums, and student loan forgiveness. But suddenly, with the Trump tariff, i.e. EPA, suddenly they want to draw it narrowly. So he's showing, even though they agree with him in this case, why didn't you agree with me on the other cases? When democratic issues were at first, if you're gonna interpret laws narrowly consistently. He writes, why do my concurring colleagues read IEEPA so much more narrowly than they have other broad statutory terms found in other major legislation addressing other emergencies? So if you're gonna do it, be consistent. He's telling Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson, the leftist judges. In terms of he criticizes her criticism of the major question cases again, and basically says she's got it wrong. But we'll get. If it's important, we can get into that in more detail in the future show once I look more carefully at it. But he's basically there to defend the major question doctrine. As I said, this is Gorsuch, right? He writes, our system of separated powers and checks and balances threatens to give way to the continual and permanent accretion of power in the hands of one man. Guess who that man is? That is no recipe for a republic. That was in part of the section where he's criticizing Barrett. Then he goes into a criticism of Thomas and Kavanaugh. But here's some stuff. Thomas is basically saying Congress can delegate all the authority at once to the president, and he can delegate, everything. So Kavanaugh writes, on his view, the only powers Congress may not delegate are those that involve rules setting the conditions for the deprivation of life, liberty, or property. Kavanaugh writes, from this rule, it follows that Congress may give all its tariff powers to the president because, quote, importing is a matter of privilege, unquote. As a result, this case does not implicate any separation of power concerns at all, according to Thomas. Gorsuch says, it's a sweeping theory, one that would require us to reimagine much of our case law addressing Article 1's vesting clause, this is Article 1 of the Constitution, about the powers the Congress has, and one that presents difficulties of its own. He also writes later on, the president is seeking to exploit questionable statutory language to aggrandize his own power. So Kavanaugh's ruthless here, and ruthless towards the other justices, towards the president, towards the president's use of this law. His is a powerful rebuttal. So for him, Barrett is weak. Kavanaugh, Alito are just plain out wrong. Thomas is off the charts wrong. This is what this is how he's arguing. All right, let's see. What else do we want to say about this? This is from an article by Scott Lincecum. It's worth noting what the Supreme Court got right. When the administration invoked IEPA to impose sweeping tariffs on nearly all imports, it stretched the 1977 sanctions law well beyond anything Congress intended. IEEPA was designed to let presidents freeze assets and restrict financial transactions during genuine emergencies. The law does not function as a switch in the Oval Office for presidents to unilaterally rewrite virtually the entire tariff code passed by Congress. The court's decision provides practical relief for Americans suffering from the administration's ill-advised tariffs. Businesses have been whipsawed by tariff rates that change seemingly by the hour during the spring chaos. The Tax Foundation estimates that IEPA tariffs increase taxes on American households by about $1,000 in 2025 and will tack on another $1,300 in 2026. The unpredictability, especially for small businesses, was almost as damaging as the rates themselves. But the end of IEPA tariffs does not mean an end to unilateral trade policy. The administration has already been eyeing other largely overlooked statutes that could produce a similar result. First, let's look at Section 122. Now, let me note that this has already now been mentioned by Trump in his in his statement about the Supreme Court's decision, that this is probably what he's going to be using. Let's see what it is. Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. This provision empowers the president to address large and serious balances of payment deficits through import surcharges of up to 15%, import quotas, and some combination of the two. That surely holds considerable appeal to a president who has consistently and mistakenly railed against the alleged dangers of U.S. trade deficits. So he continues, as Stan Vuga of the American Enterprise Institute and I explained in December in Foreign Policy, the administration could replicate most of the IEEPA tariff structure through Section 122 in short order. Countries currently facing rates above 15% would see some reduction, but for every other country, the hit would be nearly identical. And crucially, Section 122 does Section 122 doesn't require the lengthy investigations that other trade statutes demand. The president could act fast. But there's a catch. Section 122 tariffs expire after 150 days, unless Congress votes to extend them. How much of a constraint this is, however, remains to be seen. If Congress declines to act, which I'm sure it will decline to act, in a sense that it needs, I think, 60 votes to pass Senate, and it's not going to get them. It might not even get a majority, given Republicans who oppose tariffs. If Congress declines to act, the administration could at least, in theory, allow the tariffs to lapse, declare a new balance of payments emergency, and restart the clock. The maneuver would raise serious separation of powers concerns, but nothing in the statute clearly forbids it. With the statute never previously invoked, there's no judicial precedent to clarify its limits. Trump could also use Section 338. There's also Section 338 in the Tariff Act of 1930, the famous Smoot-Hawley Act, that, like Section 122, has never been deployed. It authorizes the president to impose tariffs of up to 50% on imports from any country that discriminates against U.S. commerce as compared to other nations. The statute is remarkably short and vague. It assigns a role to the U.S. International Trade Commission, which has a duty to ascertain that at all times to be informed whether discrimination is occurring and to bring the matter to the attention of the president together with recommendations. But whether this functions as a procedural prerequisite or merely an advisory channel is unclear. The statute separately authorizes the president to impose tariffs whenever he shall find as a fact that discrimination exists, Does that language empower the president to act unilaterally, or must he wait for the commission's finding? The text doesn't say. The Congressional Research Service has suggested that Section 338 falls into the category of tariff authorities that do not contain requirements of a federal agency to conduct an investigation and make certain findings before tariff may be imposed. But this interpretation has never been tested by an administration, any administration or any court. Anyway, what counts as discrimination? Who knows? The law doesn't really say with any precision. Anyway, if he invokes if he invokes any of these things, it's going to go back in front of the courts, and it'll take a year to legislate. And even if they rule that's unconstitutional, you'd have another year of tariffs. They continue in their article, unfettered use of Section 122 and 338, along with the better-known statutes like Section 301 and 232, could essentially recreate the IEEPA predicament. In practice, this means the president can continue reshaping tax policy and the business environment on a whim, redistributing hundreds of billions of dollars and imposing pervasive uncertainty without express congressional authorization. The court did important work by reining in the misuse of IEPA, but judicial intervention can only go so far. Congress spent decades handing off its constitutional trade authority to the executive branch, and those delegations remain largely intact until lawmakers reclaim some of that authority and add serious procedural safeguards. The risk of arbitrary tariffs will continue. The court did its job. Now Congress needs to do its own. And that's the bottom line. Congress needs to act. Trump is going to create chaos. It's what he does. Trump will continue to find ways to unilaterally do whatever he feels like doing because that's what he does. Trump, before the ruling came out earlier this morning, said, without tariffs, everybody would be bankrupt. Everybody. The whole country would be bankrupt. He believes this crap. He really does. Or he has convinced himself that he believes it, whatever. He said it often enough. This is his religion. Tariffs are. And he will find a way to impose them on us. He will raise our taxes. There's no question about that. Congress is the only entity that can actually rein him in. So now, again, there's a lot to analyze in the court decision. Thomas's decision in particular is bad, really bad. He's basically suggesting that tariffs are not even a tax, which is just untrue. Kavanaugh's is really, really a pragmatist, which is what you'd expect for Kavanaugh. A pragmatist, willingness to let the president do whatever the hell he wants. So to be continued, but again, expect chaos. No surprise with Trump. The other aspect of this is one more aspect that I think is important to point out, is that what do you call it? Another aspect of this is that companies are not going to sue to get refunds. How the refunds going to be allocated, who they're going to be allocated to. Big companies have lawyers to be able to go and sue this and spend the money to get the money back. Small businesses don't. Will the Treasury automatically issue refunds? Will it have to go through the courts and through lawsuits? How is the refund process going to happen? Who knows? But this is also going to create a lot of chaos and a lot of uncertainty, primarily for small businesses. It's going to be the fight of 2026 is refunds. And again, a major political flashpoint, and the harm is going to be borne primarily by small businesses, because large businesses can afford the fight and small businesses cannot. All right. I guess that's, basically what I had to say about this. When the Decision was first announced. Stocks went up. They kind of went, they've kind of moderated. They're not up a lot. The stock market doesn't know what to do with this because, again, Trump is just going to impose other tariffs. And there's huge uncertainty around all this stuff. And again, chaos. And the market does not like chaos. Does not like chaos. So it's hard to tell. Gold has gone up. Silver's up quite a bit. Silver's up like 7%. Other stuff is pretty stable. The dollar's stable. The bonds are slightly, interest rates are up a little bit. But it's going to take a while to absorb it. And really, everybody's going to wait to see what happens. Trump says, let's just see what this is. Trump attacks Supreme Court, says he's imposing 10% global tariff. Let's see, I'm not sure under what authorization he's going to impose. His first move, imposing a 10% global tariff under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. So that's 122, trade, the fact that you have deficits. So a 10% global tariff. So more uncertainty, everything's going to come down. But then what? The statute allows the president to impose tariffs up to 15%. So it's interesting he's only doing 10. Let's see, what else is he saying here? Impose 10% global, a 10% global tariff over and above the normal tariffs already being charged. Now that the Supreme Court has struck down his white sweeping, so I don't know what that means. Which tariffs that are already being charged, and who is he penalizing here exactly? And this is like, yeah, I'm gonna increase all your taxes because I'm mad at the Supreme Court. The president also mentioned that all national security tariffs under Section 232 and Section 301 remain fully in place, including those tariffs on furniture, which is, as I mentioned, a national security issue. Under 232, we have, which is under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, national security again. We have 50% levies on semi-finished copper products, 25% levies on some semiconductors, automobile tariffs. There are lots of tariffs that are not affected by the Supreme Court ruling, and now he's going to impose 10% on top of that. So Trump is vindictive and crazy, and he's not a sane person. I'll give you some examples of it in a minute. He's not, I've given you lots of examples over the last 10 years and over the last few months. He's not sane. He's not, he's just he's an emotionalist, unthinking, bombastic, nutcase is what he is. And so he's just going to continue to lash out. Talking about some of the insanity, one of the most insane things that he's doing is this ridiculous board of peace, right? Which convened, I guess, yesterday. And where he is chairman for life, he handpicks members, controls the finances, and chooses his own successor. He has all the power for this thing. He supposedly has directed $10 billion of U.S. taxpayer money to go to this board of peace. He has no constitutional authority to do that. Only Congress could do that. But again, it doesn't bother him, at least to say so. Who's on this board of peace? I mean, it's a list of the most authoritarian places, right? Who do you have? Bahrain, Morocco, Argentina. That's sad that Argentina joined. Azerbaijan, Bulgaria. Azerbaijan, Morocco, Bahrain, all authoritarians. Bulgaria, okay, a European democracy. Hungary, you'd expect that. Albania, Indonesia, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Pakistan, Paraguay, Belarus, the number one ally of Putin, Egypt, another authoritarian. Qatar, of course. Saudi Arabia, of course. Turkey, of course. United Arab Emirates, Uzbekistan, Mongolia, Vietnam. These are all the people who participated in the meeting yesterday, right? So France, Germany, Italy, UK, Spain, Australia, Canada, Japan, South Korea, nowhere to be seen. Our allies, nowhere to be seen. And then Trump says in a statement about them, he says, in terms of power and in terms of prestige, these are the greatest world leaders. The guy is unmoored. He is not connected to reality. Now, you could accuse me of Trump derangement syndrome, but he just is. He's you know, half the countries on the list are countries that Trump has said cannot come to the United States. They're so unreliable and risky that their citizens will not get a visa to the United States. But these are some of the best, most influential, most powerful leaders in the world. I mean, it truly is insane. Here's some quotes from Trump from his first meeting of the Board of Peace yesterday. This is some of the stuff that he said. He rambled on for about an hour during the 3-hour meeting. He rambled for an hour. He says, I want to thank Gianni and FIFA, the World Football Federation. They gave me their first peace prize. They saw that I got screwed by Norway, and they said, let's give him a peace prize. Then he gave out a shout out to Hamas. Every last remaining hostage, living and dead, has been returned back home. They dug and dug and dug. Hamas did a lot of that work. You got to give them credit for that. And then he turns to the King of Bahrain. His Majesty, the King of Bahrain, he is so rich he can sit there. He can sit wherever the hell he wants. He might take a piece of this building. Marco, he turns to Rubio, take 25% of the building, the White House, for about $6 billion. I mean, this is the President of the United States. He says, I have a good relationship with the United Nations. Other than at my last speech, they did turn off my teleprompter. I got up there. My teleprompter didn't work. First, I had an escalator that stopped. I was lucky my movie star First Lady was in front of me because I put my hands on a certain part of her body and I was able to stop my fall. This is the Board of Peace. This is the important business of the Board of Peace. Then he goes on about Melania, right? She's had a successful movie. It's #1. She's a big movie star. We can't have 2 stars in one family. I don't know what that means, but it's not good. Theaters are all packed. Women especially go back and see it 2, 3, 4 times. He turns to Witkoff. Everybody likes Witkoff. Ukraine loves him. Russia loves him. Europe loves him. I don't think Ukraine loves him. And I'm pretty sure Europe doesn't love him. And I'm pretty sure Israel doesn't love him. He says the president of Paraguay is here. A young, handsome guy. Always nice to be young and handsome. It doesn't mean we have to like you. I don't like young, handsome men. Women I like. Men, I don't have any interest. I mean, it's not a stand-up routine. This is an hour-long presentation in front of the Board of Peace by President Trump. Can you imagine what all these rulers of all these countries are thinking? He says, this building was built for peace. Nobody knew what to name it. And when Marco named it after me, I had nothing to do with it. I swear they said, there's a surprise coming. I thought they were going to give me a lot of money or something, maybe cash. I can always use some extra cash. Then the president of Kazakhstan, who is a dictator, the dictator of Kazakhstan, said, I'd like to propose to establish a special President Trump Award to recognize his special peacekeeping efforts. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. This is your president. This is the world in which we live in. And just to put a definitive exclamation mark around this is president, your president. And don't you forget it. And this is, I mean, I know a lot of you will say I'm making this up because, the TDS or whatever. I'm making this up because this couldn't happen in America. But it indeed this is America. And the Department of Justice building has, installed a banner in the front of the building facing, I guess, Constitution Avenue. I'm not sure what avenue this is. One of the big avenues in Washington, D.C. A massive banner. I'm looking at it now. It's about 4 stories high. 4-story high banner with a giant photograph of Donald Trump in front of the Department of Justice. A giant banner of Donald Trump. I mean, this is like full-blown North Korea or Germany in the 30s or Soviet Union in the 50s or whatever. We don't do this stuff in America. Don't do this stuff in America. Like, this is personality worship, dictator worship, presidential worship. This is sick. It is really sick. And we're talking about the Department of Justice. And this is, maybe it's worth reminding you, this is year 1 of 4. We got 3 more of these. I mean, what's going to happen in the next 3 years? How's he going to be top himself? Well, we'll see. I've got some video of Hegseth. All right, take a breath, deep breath. All right, we will survive. We will survive. Somebody says you can say whatever you want about Trump. You can't say he's not a megalomaniac. You can say he's a crazy megalomaniac, but that's maybe true of all megalomaniacs. It's completely insane. Nuts. All right. Let's turn to the economy quickly. We've got a few stories that we can do pretty quickly, I think, here. But let's turn to the economy. We now have GDP numbers for the whole of 2025 have come out. We also got our another inflation number. Price inflation, I have to say price inflation, not monetary inflation, price inflation number. So we'll talk about that. But let's start off with GDP numbers. The U.S. economy grew only 1.4% at the end of last year. That's the Q4. Now, when I say it grew 1.4%, that's annualized. That's an annualized GDP number. So whatever it is, if that continued over the entire year, it would be 1.4%. So that's slow, right? That's slow growth, not negative growth, but slow growth. Consumer spending was decent, 2.4%. Business investment in AI was strong, nothing really else. Government shutdown shrunk government expenditure, which is a part of GDP. So that was a real drag on the GDP number. So the shutdown hurt growth as measured by GDP. But the reality is, GDP was slow last year. So if you look at the entire year last year, a 12-month GDP over last year, the economy grew in 2025 by 2.2%. Now, that is the slowest growth we've had since 2020, when we had negative growth because of COVID. So every year of Biden's administration had higher growth. It doesn't really matter. None of the years were particularly high growth, right? All of them have been below 3%. 2.2 is lower than any year where Trump was president other than 2020. His best year was 2018 when he had 3% growth. But when he tells you we have the greatest economy ever and all of that, yeah, I mean, it's grown, which means it's better than it was in the past. So it is the best, technically, ever. But in terms of growth, it's barely growing. And look, it wasn't like we had robust growth under Biden. It was 2.8 in 2024. And Biden did a lot of things, I think, to hurt growth. But then Trump could have focused on the deregulation, could have focused on energy policy, could have focused on the few, on the positives. Instead, he basically, hammered growth with, or reduced growth significantly with tariffs and with immigration. Those two things, are a drag on growth. They're drag on business. They're drag on product, on increased production, and therefore drag on GDP. I expect 2026 to be, again, I don't expect a recession. It'll be another year of growth, but it's going to be in the 2% area. Maybe it won't be 2.2, maybe it'll be 2.4 because it won't have a government shutdown, but who knows? We might have another government shutdown. The other thing about 2025 is it was very much a year of jobless growth, anemic hiring, despite a lot of consumption and despite an AI boom, very little hiring. I'd say immigration and tariffs manifested ultimately in significant reduction in hiring. So flat, basically no new jobs in 2025. So decent year for GDP, a good year for the stock market, but a lot of uncertainty. A lot of uncertainty because you're taking away employees, and you're taking away, and you're creating these taxes that nobody knows exactly what to do with. So economy's chugging along, but slowly, chugging along and slowly. Also came out today, December PCE, that is something consumer expenditure. I forget. All right, it slipped my mind. Anyway, PCE is a measure of inflation that the Fed likes in particular. This is the one the Fed really tracks, right? Personal consumption, personal consumption something, expenditure. So this is a preferred inflation measure of the Fed. It rose 2.9%, which is above expectations, which were 2.8. Core PCE, which is taking away the stuff that's more volatile, rose at 3%, which is significantly more, significantly higher. These are all annualized rates, of course. It's at the highest level. The core is at the highest level since November 2023. So in other words, inflation as measured in prices is not going down, not in a significant way, not according to the way the Fed measures it, which means the Fed is very, very unlikely to reduce interest rates anytime soon. Personal consumption expenditures. Thank you. God, I don't know where that just evaporated from my mind. Personal consumption expenditures. So not a good number. Not a number that Trump is going to like. Not a number that the Fed is going to like in terms of lowering interest rates. So Trump is still going to have to wait until he gets rid of the current chairman, the Fed chairman, and install his own guy. And even then, it's not clear that there will be a majority on the Fed to lower interest rates the way Trump wants them lowered. Just not clear at all. By the way, you remember Trump keeps saying $18 trillion of investment are flowing into the country. The country, foreigners are investing $18 trillion into the country. Well, another thing to note is that the amount of foreign direct investment in the United States declined every quarter last year. It was quite high in Q1, it declined in Q2, declined further in Q3, and declined really, really low in Q4. So it doesn't look like the world is rushing to invest in the United States. I guess not really that surprisingly. All right, that's GDP. Let's do Hegseth. All right, Hegseth. You know Hegseth? He is our Secretary of War. Secretary of War. And he is speaking at some Christian conference and this is what he had to say. So listen to Hegseth, and yeah, I think a lot of people get, I don't know, shivers down their spine or goosebumps. I'm not sure which ones you get. Listen to this.
If I may offer a few observations. Protecting the God-given life of an unborn baby is not political, it's biblical.
Biblical. Commanded by God. I think that's right. It's not political. It's about the Bible. It's about religion, imposing religion on all of our lives. But he keeps going. He keeps going. They're cheering. They're all excited. They're thrilled by this. This is amazing. And but he keeps going. It's not the end of it.
Protecting our borders from criminals who steal from us, assault our loved ones, and poison our citizens is not political, it's biblical.
Kill out, poison, what are they doing exactly? Really? You know, the monsters that are coming. I mean, think about the dehumanizing way in which he's presenting them. Think about just the lies that are involved.
Protecting women and children from being trafficked for sexual slavery is
go.
not political, it is biblical.
Playing right into the MAGA hands. How about prosecuting?
Standing guard over our children, rather than letting them be taught perverse sexual practices or sharing a locker room with men pretending to be women, is not political, it's biblical.
All right, so, I mean, the whole agenda of the right is not political, it's not rational, it's not reasoned out, it's biblical. It's commanded in the Bible, therefore one must do it. They love that. Anything with trans, the right goes nuts.
Protecting our culture and our religion from godless ideologies and pagan religions, not political. It's biblical.
So going after me is going to be biblical? Godless ideologies. That's me. I'm a godless ideologue. But don't worry, it's not political. It's biblical. Equal to Reality says, "I think I'm going to throw up now." Wait, you haven't heard the best one. I think this was the end of this passage. Yeah, that's that. Here's another little segment. This is the end of his speech. This is the end of his speech. Listen to this beauty.
Closing, as long as I have breath, I commit to you that I and we should never allow any group, no matter how large or small, to silence us from speaking the capital T truth.
Nobody wants to silence him from speaking. That's just a lie. He can speak whatever he believes is the capital T truth, but it's a myth that anybody wants to silence that. But here's what he means.
Christ is king.
That's the truth. The capital T truth is this. Here it is.
Truth. Christ is king. He died for our sins. We are forgiven.
Look, the audience is going wild. They're going crazy. He can't even smile as they're going crazy. He can't even accept that. Oh, even Jennifer's now throwing up. Not good. Not good. I didn't know I induced people throwing up on my show.
And he will come again in glory. Amen. Closing, as long as...
Can't wait for him to come again in glory. Can't wait. Can't wait. All right, that is your Secretary of War and a future mover and shaker in Republican politics. This is the new Republican Party. It's gone way beyond the religious right, the moral majority of the 1980s and 1990s. This is now all out war on anything that is secular. Silence us godless ideologies. This is, and look at him with his sleek hair and his perfect suit and lecturing in other places. You remember lecturing the generals. I mean, this is a dangerous man. Heads our military, heads the Pentagon, and has I think, a bright future in the Republican Party as we know it. All right, let's switch topic dramatically again. We're covering the news, right? So it turns out that Hamas has basically done its latest revision of their casualty data, right? All the data we have on casualties in Gaza comes from Hamas. So they have now revised the casualty data in the Gaza war. And you know, I'm going to present you with the facts from that, according to them, right? The list has enough information to cite 68,000 deaths. Now, I think there's broad agreement that Hamas has probably lost about 25,000 fighters. That leaves 44,000 war deaths to be accounted for. Wait a minute, this is not right. 41,000. They can't 43,000. I don't know. They can't count. 43,800. Okay, they're rounding up. 44,000. 46,800 deaths. One second, let me just look to see what's going on here. That's all right. So 44,000 war deaths account for. Included in the 44,000, according to Hamas, are 10,000 natural deaths. So 10,000 people died natural causes in the Gaza Strip. That means 34,000 supposedly civilians were killed by Israel, and it includes those killed by Hamas and the other militant groups, either by execution, rocket misfiring, turf wars, and the like. So even using Hamas's own numbers, Israel's civilian-to-combat death rate is pretty close to 1-to-1. Now, that's never been accomplished in urban war setting. We've never seen anything like that. And particularly in an environment in which Hamas turned Gaza into one big human shield. So given Hamas started the war, refused to surrender, held hostages, fired at Israel from civilian homes, managed the whole war from headquarters in hospitals, in schools, the reality is that the number of Gazans killed is absurdly low. And the idea of a genocide is ridiculous and, you know, just irrational. So as we get more numbers, I'll keep reminding you of this fact. I think this is going to be a really good interview, but in a few weeks, let me see when exactly. On March 9th, I'm going to be interviewing Andrew Fox. You should look Andrew Fox up. You can find him on Twitter and elsewhere. He's a really interesting guy, Special Forces, British Army. He spent some time with the Israeli forces, with the aid distribution efforts in Gaza. He has first-hand account of Gaza. He's looked at the numbers. He's analyzed what happened. He has views on the strategy. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with some of what he says about Iran right now. I don't agree with everything he says about Gaza. But here's a guy who has first-hand experience of what was going on and has written academic papers about the Gaza war. And so we're going to be refuting this whole idea of genocide and analyzing the Israeli army's combat. I doubt that Andrew would agree with me on just war theory, but that's not the point. The point here is just to get the facts, which I think he has in a way that others don't. All right. So that is quickly on Hamas. Okay, finally, Tucker Carlson went to Israel. He flew to the airport, and he interviewed Mike Huckabee basically at the airport. He wouldn't even go into Israel, and immediately flew out of Israel to Europe. I guess he can tell you now that he's been to Israel. He claims he was harassed at the airport by Israeli security. Now, I wish that were true. He should be harassed by the Israeli security. He is an enemy of the state of Israel. And his whole visit to Israel should be scrutinized, and he should generally be harassed. I'm all for harassing Tucker Carlson. But the reality is that he wasn't harassed. There's actually video of an entry. He's treated like anybody else. There's no, he wasn't interrogated or anything. He just goes in and he's asked even by one of the security guys to get a photo with him, like a selfie. So he's lying. He's lying about it. Now, he went there to interview Mike Huckabee. Now, the whole idea of interviewing Mike Huckabee is to show how Mike Huckabee is an evil, nasty, horrible human being, and to justify why everybody should be anti-Israel, and that Huckabee is just evil for supporting Israel. Now, I haven't listened to the interview. I will, but it came out literally just before the show came on. But here is the timestamps. Here are the timestamps for the interview. So it starts off with Tucker Carlson explaining why he was interrogated in Israel. He wasn't. I was interrogated once by the Israeli security forces. Believe me, Tucker was not interrogated. I can tell you something about, mild interrogation. He didn't even get that. I wasn't interrogated at the airport. I was interrogated under other circumstances. Anyway, then he says, why did Mike Huckabee meet with American traitor Jonathan Pollard? So a stab initially, right? Has Huckabee advocated to extradite sex offenders who flee from U.S. to Israel? Why are there still classified Epstein files? Is Israel of the Bible the current secular government of Israel? Is Israel's Christian population declining? Who has a right to the land of Israel? The killing of Christians in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu's calls for genocide. Huckabee accuses Tony Aguilera of lying. I don't know who that is. Of fighting wars on Israel's behalf. Why are 9/11 files still classified? Netanyahu's many visits to the White House. The nuclear weapons that Israel stole. I thought demons developed those anyway. I think they gave them to Israel. The demons gave them to Israel. Why is the U.S. sending Israel so much money? Is Huckabee okay with Israel providing free abortions? How many Americans support war with Iran? Was the war in Iraq really about 9/11? Israel sabotaging of U.S. negotiations with Iran. How many journalists has Israel killed in Gaza? Is Huckabee concerned about the persecution of Christians? In other words, every question is slanted against Israel. Every question is a gotcha question to Huckabee. It's just stunning, just the questions. Now, I'm going to listen to it because it's going to be interesting if Huckabee fights back or if he's just going to roll over in this. I don't think he's going to roll over. I think he's pretty media savvy, and I think he'll fight back. Tucker Carlson is already telling people that he thinks this interview is going to get Huckabee fired by the Trump administration. At least that's what he's trying to do. Anyway, he's trying to portray Huckabee as a pedophile protector, a traitor to America, and so on. And that's what the interview is all about. Now, you might say, Yaron, stop talking about Tucker. He's irrelevant. The guy believes in demons. Who gives a damn what he thinks? He's irrelevant in America today. Nobody takes Tucker Carlson seriously. All right. So here is the results of a recent survey of 561 Republicans, balanced by age and gender, conducted January 21 and 22, 2026, with a margin of error plus minus 4%. What they're trying to do is basically try to figure out how popular is Tucker Carlson. Basically as an indicator of broader Republican sentiments about issues, including the issue of Israel. Okay, so the first major finding is a clear generational divide. Across the entire sample, more than 45% of respondents believed Tucker Carlson is likely to run for national office, and more than 48% said they would vote for him if he did. So notice this. 48% of, granted, this sample of Republicans, I mean, you'd need a much larger sample, but 48% said they would vote for Tucker Carlson, in spite of the fact that in our view, I speak for myself and some of the people who listen to me, the guy is certifiable. I mean, this close to certifiable. I mean, demons attack him at night. Demons invented the atomic bomb. Israel is the most wickedest country on planet Earth. Iran are the good guys. Islam is not that bad. Sharia law is cool. I mean, you could go on and on and on. But we know Tucker's completely nuts. That's 48%. Now, you say it's only 4% of Americans, but if he wins a primary, we could win America. It's stunning that half of Republicans would vote for this idiot, this evil idiot. But here's the kicker. Among Republicans under the age of 44, now most of my listeners, most of the listeners to Yaron Brook Show, significantly over 50%, about 60% of the listeners of this show are under the age of 44, under the age of 44. So my audience, among Republicans under the age of 44, support was 58% said they would vote for him. 58, almost 60% of young Republicans would vote for him. Among Republicans age 45 and older, enthusiasm drops dramatically. Only 41% would be willing to vote for him. Again, 41 is still way higher than would make me comfortable. So Carson's political appeal is younger, is younger Republicans. Now, this is not an outlying finding. Other surveys have found basically the same thing, right? Tucker Carlson is incredibly popular. As horrific, as insane, as disturbing, as wanting to make you throw up as that is, it's the reality. Tucker Carlson is incredibly popular. And that's why I keep showing him and talking about him, because I'm hoping to give you the ammunition to go out there and crush these people. So it's scary. It's scary. Tucker Carlson is much smarter than Trump, much better educated, much more articulate than Trump, and in a position of power, much more dangerous than Trump. I, by the way, years ago predicted that Tucker Carlson would run, and I still think he might, and I think he has a good chance. Would he run against J.D. Vance, who is a friend? I don't know, but he's going to support J.D. Vance, and he'll bring the younger voters with him. God, people are throwing up all over the place on my chat. Stop throwing up on my chat. Shouldn't throw up in the chat. All right, guys, we started with good news. We ended with bad news. Sorry, but that is the news for this Friday, February 20th. Remind you, tomorrow we have an AMA at 2 p.m. East Coast time. So ask me anything. Please join us. And those of you who contribute on a monthly basis more than $25, you can join the panel. You should have gotten a link to it. Let's see. So yeah, that'll be on Saturday. There will be something on Sunday. I don't know yet, so stay tuned for a Sunday show. I'll let you know what the topic will be soon, right? Oh, God, why is this like that? 1 second. All right, I want to remind you all that there... I want to remind you all that there will be, what was I going to say? That I'm doing a seminar in London on February 28th. It's on, so I have now enough people that it's definitely on. So now it gets to the point where there's not going to be that much space. I've rented a room. The room is not very big. I didn't want a big group anyway. So There's going to be limited availability. Please consider signing up and sign up this weekend. Sign up this weekend so we can finalize it and lock this down. It's going to be about capitalism. It's going to be very. There's going to be 10 people, and we're going to talk about capitalism. We're going to be lots of questions from you, lots of interaction. It'll be fun to hang out. We can all go out to dinner afterwards if you want. So all of that is available. It's £300 for 4 hours. Not that much money, I don't think. So sign up. You can sign up yaronbrookshow.com. Just go yaronbrookshow.com. Scroll down to where the February 28th event, and there's a link there to the Eventbrite where you can sign up. And sign up should be easy, not like last year where it was very difficult. This year should be easy. So please consider that. I'm not buying you dinner. No, I'm joining you for dinner. We can all go to dinner together. I buy my own dinner, or you can buy me dinner if you want. But I'll buy my own dinner, and each person will buy their own dinner. The £300 per person will not go very far if I have to buy you dinner with that as well. All right. I don't know if I can endorse that, Robert. I'll pitch your show without mentioning the person you're interviewing, because I don't endorse the person you're interviewing. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to do? I'm trying to think what we want to do. I'm not buying you dinner again. But first of all, you have to come. It's London. So you have to be in London or somewhere in the UK, or, get on a train. Come on over. It'll be fun. Also, I'll be doing events in Exeter, Durham, and Oxford. I think all of the events are potentially open to the public. YaronBrookShow.com will have updated information about where, what, all the details. But Durham, Exeter, Oxford. Exeter on Monday, Durham Tuesday, Oxford Thursday, Oxford Wednesday. And then if you're in Switzerland, Roland is in Switzerland. I'm doing an event in Zurich on Thursday. That's not next week. It's the week after next. First week in March. I'll be in Zurich on March, I think it's 6th. It's a Thursday of that week. So again, information available on YaronBrookShow.com. Check it out. If you're in the area, come by and see us. Okay, quickly, don't have a lot of time today. We'll do our sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute encourage you to come to Porto for our conference, European conference. I'll be speaking there. Ankar and Tautzfani. Check out AynRand.org/start here. If you're under 34, you can get a scholarship. If you're paying, then you can get a discount. 26YBS10 is the discount code. Alex Epstein is number one thinker in the world on issues of energy, fossil fuels, electricity, power more broadly. Check him out, alexepstein.substack.com. You'll become a much better thinker and communicator of ideas. HendershotWealth.com, HendershotWealth.com/YBS, Hendershot with 2 T's. They've got a product that can really shield capital gains tax liability. Check out the interview I did with Robert on my show. It's in my playlists under sponsors, and you can also check out the website. And finally, Defenders of Capitalism, defendersofcapitalism.com. This is Michael Williams, and I've worked on this as well. A program called Defenders of Capitalism. Michael is great. The program is really good. Thinking of different ways to expand it. Maybe go to the website, check out. It's actually a pretty beautiful website. Check out the website. Check out what is the program. Maybe you can invite us into your company to present on capitalism, or maybe you can into your industry group or whatever. Think of ways in which you can bring Defenders of Capitalism to a wider audience. Thank you, guys. All right, don't forget Patreon. Sign up for patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show, and become a monthly supporter of the Yaron Brook Show. all kinds of perks at different levels of contribution. From the perks really start at $10 all the way up to $1,000 a month. So check that out and let me know. That would be amazing. All right, let's jump into the questions. I have a hard stop at around 4 p.m. Eastern time. A lot of $2 and $5 questions, not many $20 questions, but we did get a $100 sticker from Wes. So thank you, Wes, who really, really chipped into the goal. So thank you, Wes. Let's see if we had any other stickers. Let me just check. Jacob, thank you. Bonnie, thank you. Mary Aline, thank you. Gary, thank you. All provided with stickers. And you too should come over and do a sticker. Wes did $100. Those others are quite a bit less, but all appreciated, all valued. And I thank all of you. All right, let's start with Clark with a $50 question. There's no place like the USA. Agree or disagree with the Supreme Court's decision. The fact that a small business owner can take the president to court and win says a lot about how our constitutional system is meant to work. Yes, and how, in spite of everything, it still works. Now, Trump's vindictiveness will result in him imposing tariffs on all of us anyway, using some other thing. But the system works. It takes time, and it's not principled enough, and we don't have the concept of individual rights working for us in the way it should. But the system works, and there is no place like the U.S. in the sense of that separation of powers and the checks and balances. And that's why we need to fight for that. It's the one thing that saves us. The Declaration of Independence has become irrelevant, sadly, in this 250th year of its signing. It's becoming irrelevant. But the Constitution is still alive, and it's still being used. And whatever is left of the Constitution that's being used, we need to bolster. We need to support. So yes to the Supreme Court. Yes to defending our constitutional rights. Yes to any way you can to preserve the separation of powers and the checks and balances that exist. Thank you, Clark. Michael, will the Supreme Court ruling make Trump so angry he attacks Iran or uses the Iranian airstrikes as a distraction from his tariff embarrassment? I don't know. It's impossible to predict Trump. I doubt it. Lately, he's been floating a limited attack on Iran. So just a small attack just to show them we're serious and then continue negotiating. He really, really, really doesn't want to go all in on Iran. And even though he has all the military there, even though it won't be a very lengthy campaign, even though he'd win big, he doesn't want it. And his people like Tucker Carlson thinks he's being manipulated by the Jews to do it. So he's reluctant to do it. And so who knows? Maybe he does. He's pissed off, so he goes after Iran. Maybe that'll be a good outcome. Michael, do most people who hold altruism intellectually not want it fully? They're fine with you keeping most of your own money, but you need to share some of it. Selfishness is okay if it's diluted with altruistic activities. I mean, not selfishness, right? Selfishness is not okay. But yeah, you have to some extent, pursue your own self-interest. I think, what's his name? The Australian effective altruism guy. I mean, basically, he says, look, I give 10%, and everybody should give 10% to charity. And he says, look, I should give more, but I want to live in a decent place, and I also want to eat decent food, and I want to have decent clothes. And I get it. I should give more, but I don't really want to. So it's okay to pursue your self-interest, just not too much of it. And if you commit to doing 10%, then it's better than nothing. Then you've done at least some altruistic. But you should still feel guilty. Still feel guilty about not going all in. I think that is a common attitude among, I'd say, the Peter Singer. Yes, thank you, philosophical detective. It's ridiculous, my incapacity to remember names and words escape me. But yes, Peter Singer. And I think that's a pretty common attitude among, now some, Peter Singer and there's McCaskill, I think, at Oxford, who go all in by saying, Well, you should pursue like a career and money so that you will have more to give away. You should get rich so you can give more away, right? But the aim is to give more away. And yes, you have to sustain yourself in the meantime. You have to be motivated. So yeah, you can do some fun stuff, to stay motivated so you can make more money, so you can give more away. But everything is underlined by a certain sense of altruism, and anything you do that is even tinged with a little bit of self-interest also has to have an element of guilt associated with it. Christian, may I ask you why you were interrogated by security? In my younger years, I had my baggage checked. The girls were searching through the underwear in my backpack. But as a backpacker, I had a great time in the Holy Land. Oh, no, I mean, I wasn't interrogated by the border police in Israel. I was interrogated by the real people, what's called the Shin Bet, the Israeli Internal Security Forces. And basically, I was interrogated while I was in the army, and I was interrogated because they had identified me as an objectivist. So I was interrogated because of my interest in Ayn Rand, because of my involvement with other objectivists, because there was a little objectivist movement in Israel. So objectivism was suspicious in their eyes. And I had a long interrogation it was while Israel was in war with Lebanon in 1982. And it was a lengthy interrogation with the Shin Bet. And it was kind of scary. A lot of, I was threatened. And anyway, sometime, if you play poker at Ocon, then you can ask me the question, because that'll be a good distraction for you guys. But I like distract people during poker. But sometime I'll tell you the whole story. But yeah, and they actually punished me later, not right then, but I was punished later. My security clearance was basically taken away from me. I had a top secret security clearance that was taken away from me at some point. So yeah, it was pretty bad. Israel is a very imperfect country, and certainly was when I was there. All right. Things look prom. This is from yesterday. A question came in right at the end. Could you please tell the media source regarding trade deficit increases? It's super helpful when you name the original source so we can forward them to others. Sure. I mean, this one, you can find it anywhere, but Wall Street Journal certainly had a story about it. Every one of the big media companies had it, but it was also covered by alternative media. Anybody honest about economics carried the story, but you can find it. The Wall Street Journal is good on these kind of issues. So the trade deficit, I think, was one of the top stories on the Wall Street Journal yesterday. And it's just facts. It's not. I know I get accused all the time of relying too much on what people call mainstream media, whatever the hell that is. All right, Chalisama. Have you been watching A Night of Seven Kingdoms? If yes, what do you think of it? God, what do I think of it? Yes, I've been watching. I haven't watched the final episode. I guess that's soon. This weekend is coming out. It's kind of fun. I don't like that the hero is kind of a doofus. He's not very smart, is he? He's big and brawny. He has integrity. He stands up for the weak and the poor, as a knight should do. He stands up to authority. Okay, but it's pretty superficial. He's, at the end of the day, the show, and this is true of all the what do you call it, Game of Thrones. I mean, there's an enormous amount of violence. The violence is pretty gross and unnecessary, I think, in its explicit nature and brutality. there's a fight. He wins the fight. It's like, okay, what's it really about? I mean, a better night with more integrity, and this is all a prequel to the Game of Thrones universe. So I enjoy it, but it's just not that interesting. And it doesn't. What it lacks is, it lacks the grandeur and drama and much deeper and more interesting themes that Game of Thrones had. Game of Thrones had some just amazing episodes and some super overwhelmingly dramatic stuff. And visually, there were things in Game of Thrones that just left you, wow, they did that. And so while the themes of Game of Thrones overall are very limited, because you're setting it up in a barbaric environment where kings are rulers, absolute rulers are everywhere. There's only so much you can do with that kind of thing. It's not gonna advocate for liberty or freedom in any kind of way. But there were some really good themes around violence. There were some really good themes around religion and the role of religion in politics and what happens when they combine. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I just don't think it's great. And he's a little, even if you think he's in his late teens, he's not very smart. He doesn't come across as very smart. And it's almost like they're playing him that way on purpose. Even a teenager can be smart. And, he almost wins by luck. So it's not like he won because he's smarter, or he won because he's a better fighter, or more sophisticated fighter, or more thoughtful fighter. He wins by luck. Which, yeah. James, do you think the Supreme Court released their decisions just before the State of the Union on purpose, just to flex their muscle? God, I never thought of that. When is the State of the Union? I guess next Tuesday or something? I don't know. It's a good question. They're going to be there, and he's going to wag his finger at them. He's not going to be nice to them. So it's going to be interesting. Wow. I forgot. That makes it all the more dramatic. Now I have to watch the State of the Union, even though I can't actually. I find it very difficult to sit and listen to Trump. I can read him, but listening to him just, ugh. He's such a horrible human being. Ian, what percentage of tariffs have been thrown out? About 60% maybe, 50, 60%, something in that range. Liam, how was your interview with Moses Hassan? Could you convert him to objectivism? No, I don't think he's a convert to Christianity. There's no reason to think that he's going to convert to objectivism. It was good. You can find it. It's online. It's on my channel. So check it out. I mean, he's obviously an incredibly courageous, brave, amazing human being that could do what he did and go through the kind of transformation that he did. I mean, my hat off to him. Whatever expression of respect. I have a huge amount of respect for him, and he comes across as super intense, but super principled and dedicated and understanding of the barbarity of the Palestinian culture as it exists today. Clark says there are only two things for certain in life: death and taxes. Government powers are treated as a metaphysical given. Yes. And, it's very, very, very unpopular and rare for anybody to really challenge them. It was Mossab Hassan. Yes, Mossab. You can find it on my channel or on the Ayn Rand Institute channel from a few days ago. Check out the interview. Definitely go watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. Harper Campbell, property rights are not the rights of property. They are the right of humans with regard to property. They are a particular kind of human right. Yeah, they're an individual right. They're a derivative of the right to life. The right to life means you have a right to create and then own, that is, take control over the things that you create. So the right to life would be meaningless if you weren't the beneficiary of the products of your work, the product of your productivity. So it's the right to dispose of, the right to act on, the right to create and then dispose of your property as you see fit. So it's an extension or a derivative of the right to life. There's only really one right. There's one human right or one individual right. One. And that is the right to life. The right to property, the right to free speech, the right to the right to liberty, the right to pursuit of happiness. All of those are derivatives of the right to life. Harper Campbell, there is a huge fixation on the Jewish people, unlike anything that would be tolerated towards any group of people. Yeah, but that's always been the case. It's an historical fact that at least since the birth of Christianity, Jews will be singled out for special attention, call it that, for persecution, for negative views and conspiracy theories and everything else. And it's in any time of tribalism, the Jewish tribe is identified, isolated, and attacked, and nothing has changed. I think David Deutsch calls it the pattern. It's kind of a pattern. He claims it goes back from before Christianity. I've yet to see real evidence of that, but certainly since Christianity, there is a pattern. Always go after the Jews, and we're seeing it again today. Now, Savage Algorithm, will the tariffs still be collected just under a different statute? It looks like it. It looks like it'll be different tariffs, different rates, different process, but it will be under different statutes. That's what Trump just announced. It's a matter of him operationalizing that in an executive order, and exactly how that functions we will see in the next few days. But unfortunately, yes. Although technically it seems like they will have to return the tariffs that have been collected so far under the existing tariff. And remember, about 50% of the tariffs are not under this particular provision, so they continue as usual, like the aluminum tariffs, the furniture tariffs. Those are under the national security provision. Now, Savage Algorithm, Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh all dissented. How pathetic. Pure tribalism. This case was clear. Yes. I think Alito and Thomas, it's tribalism, particularly Thomas, who is much better than this. Kavanaugh is pragmatism. It's just, I think he can't see the Constitution. It's just pragmatic. This is create chaos, and it's a mess, so why do it? And it has implications he doesn't like. Non-Savage Algorithm, have you seen Ben Shapiro's comments on the Supreme Court ruling? They were actually pretty good. No, I haven't. I don't follow Ben Shapiro. You guys let me know when he says something interesting. Yeah, I'm not surprised. He can be good on tariffs, just doesn't have the same kind of moral passion around it that he has about other topics because he doesn't want to alienate his audience. Abraham Campos, what is wrong with Alito and the other two justices? This was an easy case. Alito's a conventional, well, maybe not conventional. Alito is a big government conservative, big executive conservative, give executive as much power as he needs conservative. Thomas is become a Trump tribalist, and Kavanaugh is a complete pragmatist. That's my interpretation. The Oceanist, you mean to tell me that Tucker Carlson, the guy who said he was attacked by a demon, lied? Yeah, I know. Isn't it horrible? Roman, how to save America from the dark ages? Keep doing what I'm doing, and you guys do more. Speak, speak, speak. Challenge, challenge, challenge. And don't join tribes. Robert, looking forward to your weekend episodes, but Amy and I are interviewing he who shall not be named at 6 p.m. So don't run too late. Kidding, not kidding, kidding, not kidding. I'm not going to run past 4 p.m. Eastern time. So you got plenty of time. You got plenty of time. Sorry, I don't like to promote people from the Atlas Society, so I'm not promoting him. But Stephen, a $20 question, 2-part Sharia in Europe. Okay, let's see. Thoughts on proposed to eliminate immigration benefits for all adherents to Sharia law. Why not eliminate immigration benefits to all immigrants? Why just the ones of Sharia law? And why even let adherents to Sharia law into the country? Why not just not allow people who adhere to Sharia law into the country, which is what I advocate and always have advocated for. So I don't understand. That seems like a pretty weak approach to dealing with people who want to kill you and want to take over the country and replace its government and want to undermine the very Constitution of the United States. Stephen also asks, has Europe gotten noticeably worse with Islamic migration? Can it happen here? It has gotten noticeably worse. I mean, there are places in Europe that are very difficult to visit in terms of the dominance of the Islamists there. Because of the multiculturalism in Europe, they tolerate things that the Muslims are doing that are just unthinkable, particularly the grooming gangs in England and some other sexual violence around Europe. But I'd also say that in spite of Islamic migration, Europe's still a great place to visit. And there's plenty to see and there's plenty to do, and it's still much safer than the United States, even with all the violence that Muslims bring. It's still much safer than the US. And if you look at cities in countries where Muslim immigration has gone up, like, I don't know, Stockholm in Sweden, real estate prices are still going up, which means people still want to live there. And if you look at the luxury end, you could say, oh, immigrants, illegal immigrants are driving up real estate prices, which is nonsense. But if you look at the high end, which is not where these immigrants are going to, that's rising because rich people, wealthy people want to live in a place like Stockholm. So in spite of everything you hear, you only hear the negatives, the bad stuff, the horrors. Europe is still a pretty cool place to live and pretty cool place to visit. Not as cool and as the United States, but yeah, I mean, as you know, I go to Europe, spend 2 months a year in Europe at least, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And so don't let the fact that they have Islamic immigration stop you from going to visit. Could it happen here in terms of making it worse? And so, no, I don't. Well, I mean, arguably, you could say Dearborn, Michigan is a little worse, but it's nowhere near, or some parts of Minneapolis with the Somalis, but it's nowhere near the same. The United States is very good at assimilating immigrants, even Muslim immigrants. Now, yes, they'll stay in some of their conclaves for a while, but over the generations, that'll break up and they'll go away. Also, the number of Muslims immigrating to the United States is so small. It's an insignificant number. It doesn't move the needle, really. Whereas because of where Europe is located, close to the Middle East and Northern Africa, and because of the civil wars in that region, Europe has experienced mass immigration of Muslims, which is very different than normal immigration. So Europe has to be worried about the mass immigration of Muslims into it. The United States doesn't have that worry. J.J. Chigbees, do you share the sentiment that if America en masse turns against the Jews, culturally, politically, that means the American project is over? Yes. I mean, to the extent that, that would be true if Americans today turned against blacks. And I think that the nature of the way in which MAGA and the Trump administration has turned against immigrants, if the entire American society turned against immigrants the way MAGA is against immigrants, then you'd have to say it's the last days of America. This is not good. So that kind of tribalism and that kind of of violence towards a minority, it really is. You'd think we've progressed and gotten over that. We had that with Jim Crow laws, with Ku Klux Klan, with slavery, of course, and we got over it. And to descend back into that, as we are in a sense, with immigration is just horrible. Just horrible. Roman says, when will Hegseth start his first holy war? Well, I mean, the problem is a holy war inside America. That's the really scary part. Robert says, when Amy and I went to Paris a few years back, it was simply magnificent. Absolutely. Ditto London. I love London. I'll be there soon. And incidentally, Amy works in Dearborn. And while there are parts of town I wouldn't care to visit, it's otherwise a great city. Yeah, there are parts of town in any city you wouldn't care to visit. They have more to do with poverty and gangs than it has to do with ethnic groups. There's certainly here in San Juan, there are parts of town I don't visit. All right, Michael, MAGA Christians, thank you, Robert. MAGA Christians are treating the Epstein files like they do the Bible. They just pick and choose which parts they want to believe. Yes, and then they analyze them and they find conspiracies behind them and they do biblical analysis to the emails and yeah, but you're right, they pick and choose. There's certain things that are very uncomfortable, like Bannon. Bannon was very close to Epstein, and yet his show is still as popular as ever, as far as I can tell. Jennifer, thank you for the awesome show. Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate the support. Robert says thank you. Thank you, Robert. Linda says, with things heating up in the Middle East, how do you feel about auctioning the painting? Oh, the painting, God. Yeah, we can do something. I need to get my act together. Let me see if I can get my act together this weekend. I need to look at it again. Is there a more developed, because you said that was a work in progress, is there a more developed version of it? But we can do that. Thanks for reminding me. Maybe send me another email later today, tomorrow. God, there's so many things. You have no idea, guys. And I just find it hard to to keep everything top of consciousness. But yes, we can probably do something with the painting. I did want to tell you this. While we can do it, it strikes me as you're missing out on a whole audience by doing it with me. I mean, there's a massive pro-Iranian audience on like places like Twitter, and that I think you could do a lot better by doing an auction. I don't know how you would do it, but using Twitter and social media and hooking into the Iranian diaspora, who are very wealthy. I'd be happy to promote that, and we could do something related to the show as well. But I remember I wanted to tell you that this is a painting of that photograph of one of the Iranian girls burning with a cigarette, a photo of Ayatollah Khamenei. So a very powerful image as a photograph, and now as a painting. But I think you could do really, really well. Hooking into that audience, and I don't know if I can get that audience to come to my show, but I wonder if there's a way to leverage social media to get to that audience and do much better than you would do on my show. So that's the thought I had, just in terms of maximizing the revenue for it. So let's talk about it, or you think about it and let me know. Take that into a consideration. Think about it. I don't know. All right, Christian. Shocked to hear the Shabak story. Objectivists are the biggest offenders of Israel today, so I hope those agents now know better. Who knows? One day, I don't know. I need to see if I can, maybe they'll let me look at my file. I have a file at the Shabak because of that. I probably have a file in the Shabak because of all my pro-Israel activism. But I don't know what the perception is of me in Israel. I know AIPAC won't use me because I'm too radical. I think they're still hesitant about me. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate all the super chats. I will see you all tomorrow at the AMA, Sunday at the Mazzoni show, and what else did I want to say? Yes, let's leave it at that. Catch you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Have a great, 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 great weekend. Bye.